Many of you have already heard me talk about the conservative fundamentalist Christian faith of my teens. And for most people of my generation, and even just a bit younger, that faith was inherited from their parents. But that's not so for me. My parents were kind of Christmas and Easter Christians. They went to church on the high holy days of the small town religious South, which were Easter, Mother's Day, and Christmas Eve. As an infant, I was christened in a Presbyterian church. I have no idea why or who was connected with that church in Greenville, South Carolina, but that was just what you did in 1966. You got the baby done. So my parents were in no way pressuring me to get saved or make some sort of commitment to the church or to Jesus or to join a church or anything. As a matter of fact, I remember that some of my most joyous times with my parents were when I was very small, and on Sunday mornings I would jump into bed with them and they would read me the funnies. You know, the in-color comics that came in the Sunday paper. We only had a Sunday paper a subscription to the Atlanta Journal because we were way out here in the boonies. And then Mama would make, and I thought this was one word for most of my life, grits and eggs and bacon. It's actually several words, who knew? She would make grits and eggs and bacon for breakfast, and of course homemade biscuits, which didn't even rank in the grits and eggs and bacon because they were just always there, period. That was Sunday mornings for me when I was little. But as a preteen and a teen, I began to feel a pull that was very different than my family's. Partly I felt isolated and lonely like we all do when we're teenagers, but I was also being pulled toward church and youth group and people my own age who were not allowed to reject me. Because as an awkward, shy, brainy, not quite able to keep up with the fashions preteen, I was pretty miserable at middle school. I loved youth group because the adult leaders got me and the preteens and teens were nice to me. Honestly, youth group saved my life from the bullying of middle school, and I was grateful. So I got saved at a Christian music concert at my church the summer when I was 13, in 1979, June 23rd. It's a date recorded in all of my Bibles. And when I went to middle school in September, I knew where I could fit in. When I got my lunch and went looking for a table, I had two choices. One, the teachers who would allow me to sit with them. And two, I could sit with my born-again Christian friends. I had a group. I fit in. There were no other options for me, but that's okay. Do you remember middle school lunches, friends? Do you remember trying to find a place to sit and not be humiliated? I actually Googled this when I was writing this sermon, and I found a WikiHow on 3 ways to find somewhere to sit at lunch. It's advice for middle and high schoolers, and the suggestions include find a group of friends and ask to sit with them, choose someone who looks friendly and ask if you can sit with them, or sit by yourself and look confident and see if there's anyone who needs you to invite them to sit with you. I mean, it's not bad advice, but it speaks to how hard it is to be in middle or high school and the high stakes of rejection at that age, right? It might be hard for us who are older to remember what it was like, but we know it's a real concern for so many students, and especially our LGBTQ plus students, and our students who are not neurotypical. And of course in Florida, it's becoming harder this year to be safe as an LGBTQ plus student, as some districts are requiring teachers to take down their safe space stickers, remove their LGBTQ plus friendly books, and report if kids ask to use a different name to their parents. This will make it so hard for so many kids to find their place at the table. So let's look at what Jesus recommends about finding our place at the table. He's gone to a dinner at a church leader's house. This is a Pharisee, a learned religious leader and a precursor to modern-day rabbis. Pharisees are not the enemy. They are people who knew the law and they knew their faith very well. They are not always the enemy, but they do hold a lot of power in their faith tradition. Think of bishops in other traditions, like Catholic. Jesus is a rabbi who is not one of the religious leaders of the temple. Rather, he's a religious leader of the people. And he makes these bishops, these higher ups, he makes them nervous. And he doesn't seem to mind critiquing them either. He goes to the house of a Pharisee, a high leader, for dinner, and starts instructing the guests and the host. It would be something like if the founder of our denomination, the Reverend Troy Perry, invited me to dinner and I started commenting on how he was running the dinner, inviting people, seating people. It would be very audacious of me to do that and require a certain level of bravado that I do not have. So Jesus talks about a couple of real reversals at this dinner with this Pharisee leader. First, he notices that people are trying to get themselves to the position of honor. And something we should know that is not part of our tradition, this passage relies on some knowledge of Palestinian wedding feasts, in which the male guests recline on couches, with the center couch being the place of honor, and its inhabitants are chosen according to their wealth, their power, or their office. If a more prominent man arrives late, as is often the case, someone of lesser rank is asked to move to a less prestigious location if they are on that center couch. So Jesus' advice about seating oneself at a lower place to avoid being asked to move is pragmatic. Like, don't embarrass yourself, okay? But there is much more to it than just practical advice for not getting humiliated in public. Jesus is reminding us that in God's realm, the banquet is for everyone. Because the banquet is like the realm of God. Those who think they are the most exalted will find out that they are the least. And those who think that they are the least will find out that they are the most exalted. And let's talk about the real world. Because in many cases, those who need to hear the call to humility, they can't hear it. They don't hear it. They imagine that they are already humble because they don't hold the highest offices or the absolute most wealth, or because others have more power than they do. So these folks can't hear the message about humility because they don't believe it's directed to them. And then there are those who hear that message of humility when what they need to remember is their inherent worth and dignity as human beings. Many of us in the LGBTQ community have been told to wait our turn. Wait for same-sex marriage, wait for equality for women and lesbians, wait until we get same-sex marriage and then we'll focus on trans rights. But that message of faith enough to wait turns into waiting for justice that never comes. And we have tried to do these things, to be humble. But that is not where God is calling us, friends. We are already worthy. Right now, we don't have to hustle for the best seat to prove our worthiness because it already exists. We have nothing to prove. Brené Brown says, when we can let go of what other people think and own our story, we gain access to our worthiness. The feeling that we are enough, just as we are, and that we are worthy of love and belonging. When we spend a lifetime trying to distance ourselves from the parts of our life that don't fit with who we think we're supposed to be, we stand outside our story. And we hustle for our worthiness by constantly performing and perfecting and pleasing and proving. And our sense of worthiness, that critically important piece that gives us access to love and belonging, that lives inside our story. Hustling for our worthiness makes us look for the seat of honor, makes us try to take the highest seat. But we don't need to do that. Humility doesn't mean discounting our worthiness. It doesn't mean performing, perfecting, pleasing, and proving. Rather, humility means resting in the sure knowledge that we are loved and valued by our Creator for exactly who we are. And we can take that knowledge and sit in the lowliest seat, knowing that our value has nothing to do with where we are seated. All of these stories of feasts and eating and table fellowship, I mean, we see Jesus eating all the time with people, right? Because it's important. That ritual, that belonging in that meal, it's important. And all of these stories of Jesus eating with people, They are about the realm of God, where we will all dine together and there will be no higher or lower. We will all receive exactly what we need and rejoice in the fact that we are all equal and beloved and worthy in God's eyes. This, my friends, is the world that we are dreaming of, the world that we are working for as Christians, where we all have a seat at the table and where our waiting is sacred and sanctified. Amen. Our response music is